Hey, what's up, boys? So today we're going to be looking at a video titled "Every Psycho Killer Explained in 13 Minutes." Not much to say there. There's been a lot of serial killers uh, over the years, and we're going to be looking at every one of them apparently. So let's get into it.
Zodiac Killer. The Zodiac Killer was a murderer who seemed to not only kill for the sake of it, but rather the media attention that would come with it. To him, at the end of the day, it was all just a game of catch me if you can. He seemed to love the idea of this game between him and the police and enjoyed the fear he caused. He would send very detailed letters to the police and the media telling them information about the murderers that only the killer would know. He also added a sense of mockery to the police as he sent letters with secret codes saying they could show who he was if solved. The Zodiac's crimes began with the shooting of two teenagers in a lover's lane in Benicia in December 1968. Over the next year, he claimed several more victims, taunting authorities with messages. He would choose young couples in quiet places as victims and carefully planned these actions to make sure he got as much attention as possible to attract the police.
You have to be a different kind of savage, not even a different. You have to be a different kind of evil to kill someone and then taunt the police about it, and not even like lay low, right? You you're telling you're basically giving them clues on how to find you. You have to be a different kind of evil because he saw that as a game. That's wild, man.
Despite an intense investigation and hundreds of potential suspects, the Zodiac Killer only had DNA evidence pointing to different suspects, but he was never identified. His letters claimed he had killed as many as 37 people, though authorities could only link him to 5 confirmed murders. The Killer Clown.
37 people, man. That's a full-on classroom. That's a classroom of fucking. That's a high school classroom, depending on what school you're in. That's crazy, man.
John Wayne Gacy would be Pogo the Clown during local community events and charities, but in private, he would go on to be the mass murderer who would go on to kill 33 young men in his home in Norwood Park Township, Illinois. Between 1972 and 1978, Gacy lured at least 33 young men and boys to his home after advertising jobs in public areas. Once they were inside, he would
Give me a second.
1972 and 1978, Gacy lured at least 33 young men and boys to his home after advertising jobs in public areas.
I'm kind of split about that because I was about to say, how do you just trust a random man on the street like I'm going to give you a job? Then again, as I think about it, I'm like, it's understandable if you're a teen and you just want the thrill of getting your first paycheck. I understand it, but for it to happen 33 times, like, there has to be at least some kind of twinge of suspicion there. Like, no one asked any questions. Like, for me, after the 10th one, I'd be like, okay, now I see there's something up with that guy, or there's something up with, so I'm not going to really mess with people like that, if you get what I mean.
Once they were inside, he would them before eventually strangling or suffocating them to death. His killing spree came to an end in 1978 when the police discovered a significant number of human remains buried in the crawl space of his home and the surrounding area. The iceberg went deeper as the investigation revealed that he had been carefully recording his crimes in journals and keeping mementos from his victims. All this had been a game to him, and it said that it brought him so much
That seems like a common theme. They all see like human life is nothing but just toys. That's the way they see it.
happiness. In 1980, Gacy was found guilty of 33 counts of murder and was sentenced to death. But even with the fact that his life was coming to an end, his final words were, "Kiss my A." Ted Bundy.
Take him out right there, right where he stands. Just call the firing squad in, like, get this guy out of here, man.
On the surface, like many serial killers, Ted Bundy was said to be a charming and charismatic guy, and Bundy would almost always use his charisma to gain the next victim's trust. Bundy was good at talking and seemed nice, which made people trust him. This was a trick to make it easier for him to find a victim. For almost 4 years, he would go on to commit over 30 murders, with no one suspecting anything because of how nice he was. And with this, between 1974 and 1978, Bundy went on a multi-state killing spree, primarily targeting young women and girls. He would lure his victims by posing as an authority figure or pretending to need help, using things like pretending to be hurt and using crutches or a sling to manipulate victims into helping him. This not only made him seem less threatening, but also provided an opportunity to get them close to his vehicle, only to
Nah. See, the type of world we live in right now is people are way more skeptical of this. Like, because of people like these, people are way less open to kind of just helping random people on the street because of stuff like this, right? Like, I can understand why some people may have some apprehension because of this type of stuff, and yeah, I don't even blame them. Like, bruh.
brutally and murder them. Bundy's killing methods were particularly gruesome, as he often revisited the crime scenes to engage in acts of necrophilia. What's worse is that he would decapitate at least 12 of his victims and keep their severed heads to remember them. Even though he would do these murders almost regularly, Bundy was able to evade capture for years due to his ability to blend in with society. When he was a mass murderer, he outwardly seemed like a regular guy. He dated women, had a job, and wasn't socially awkward. During his eventual trial in Florida, Bundy became his own lawyer and attempted to portray himself as a victim of pornography and dysfunctional family life. However, the evidence against him was
nothing you could say could justify even a tenth of what you did. Like, basically, most of these people, like, they just have, like, they're just gone, right? I don't know what happens when they get to Earth, because something is obviously broken with them. So
overwhelming, and he was eventually convicted and sentenced to death. Milwaukee Cannibal. From necrophilia, cannibalism, and permanent preservation of body parts from his victims, Jeffrey Dahmer nearly got away with it all had it not been for
we all know who he is.
one victim who managed to get away. Jeffrey Dahmer would usually lure men, primarily young African-American men and boys, back to his apartment, where he would put drugs in their drinks, and afterward, he would do what he pleased with them. After killing his victims, he would dismember their bodies and keep various body parts, such as skulls, hands, and genitalia, with him, even eating some of the body parts. He tried different experiments on some victims, hoping it would put them in a sort of zombie-like state by using a drill and harmful chemicals, thinking this would make them stay forever. In total, Dahmer was convicted of killing 15 men and boys, although he confessed to additional murders. Perhaps the worst part is that the number might have been lower, as one of his victims, who was an underage boy from Laos, managed to escape his house even though Dahmer had drilled a hole in his head. Still, the police returned
That has to be that has to be some type of superhuman strength. Oh my god, bro. That is just, you have to be so scared for your life that even with a drill, with a hole drilled into your head, you're still going to escape like that. That survival instinct at its best, man.
Turned to Dahmer's house as Jeffrey would lie that he was his drunk boyfriend. Dahmer was eventually caught in 1991 and sentenced to life in prison, but would later die after an inmate beat him to death. Jack the Ripper. With 5 victims and 5 throats cut with almost surgeon-like precision, Jack the Ripper's death toll wasn't as high per se as other serial killers, but he did do one thing the others couldn't. He got away. The murders took place in the poor Whitechapel district of London in 1888, where the victims were all prostitutes who he most likely paid for their services, but unknown to them, they had been paid to die.
I'm sorry, that image of the prostitute is just. I'm just going. I'm sorry. I'm just.
Unlike these days, where killings like these would be everywhere on either social media or the news, in the 19th century, everyone had to rely on the newspaper or rumors going around, which made everything all the much worse. The newspapers would talk about how the Ripper would remove the internal organs of his victims, carefully keeping everything intact. At the time, education on things like human anatomy was only reserved for the richest in society, meaning the public thought they had not only a murderer, but one who was bright and possibly quite rich. And in 1888, after the first body was discovered, more kept coming. You can imagine the terror everyone was in at the time. Rumors going about that he could be a vampire who drank the victim's blood, or that he was a sort of vengeful spirit killing the immoral people in society. With most of the victims being poor prostitutes who were forced into that life to make ends meet, most of the authorities time thought they had it coming and barely protected them. But even despite the intensive investigation at the time and the numerous suspects proposed throughout the years, Jack the Ripper's identity remains one of the biggest mysteries to this day. Charles Manson. Manson
Oh yeah, this guy. He's world famous.
was essentially a cult leader who formed a commune known as the Manson family in the late 1960s, which attracted a devoted group of followers, mostly young women, with his ideologies and charismatic personality. He preached a darker philosophy that involved starting a race war he called Helter Skelter, with the plan being to commit murders against celebrities and blame it on particular black gangs. In August 1969, under Manson's orders, members of his cult murdered pregnant actress Sharon Tate, along with 4 others, at her home in Los Angeles. The following
Oh man, that's sad, man.
night, they killed couple Leno and Rosemary LaBianca in their home, leaving messages written in blood at both crime scenes that read, "Death to pigs." Pigs referring to the police officers to make it seem that this was committed by gangs instead. You see, Manson didn't even make it seem that this was committed
Give me a second. This animator here, man. No, I'm not going to get into it.
by gangs instead. You see, Manson didn't even physically commit the murders himself, but instead manipulated his followers into carrying out the acts for him. Manson was convicted of conspiracy to commit murder and received the death penalty, which was later changed to life in prison.
How do you change that? Why?
The Butcher of Plainsfield.
I have a story related to that. I don't know if you guys have heard it. There's a guy who, his name is Mackenzie. He basically did the same thing, but to a lot more people. Like literally, I'm talking hundreds. Like he incentivized these people to starve themselves because they would quote unquote get to heaven, and he just got caught. And to me, people like those, I don't like pushing the death penalty, but that is some of the most vile shit I've ever heard. And that to me is the most fitting way to get rid of this person, because what's the point of keeping them here if they've done something so vile? That's just me.
Plainfield. Ed Gain lived an isolated life with his harsh mother on their family farm in the small town of Plainfield, Wisconsin. After his mother died in 1945, Gain's already fragile mental state deteriorated further, leading him down a dark path of necrophilia, grave robbery, and finally, murder. In 1957, when local authorities investigating a local woman's disappearance had to search his property, the quiet farmer's house turned out to be among the worst things in murder history. Gain had made household items and clothing from human skin and body parts, including skulls used as bowls and human skin furniture. Further investigation.
Imagine you, because imagine going to a friend's house or a relative's house, and you're sitting on a couch, and you're like, this material is different, and then he hands you a bowl of soup, and it's like, what's this bowl made out of? Bro, I would want to kill you, bro. I would want to hurt that guy so bad, and I would shower like 7 times after that. I'm not even lying.
Investigation revealed that Gain had removed numerous corpses from local graveyards, collecting body parts and preserving them in a bizarre obsession with his dead mother. His obsession eventually led to the murder of 2 women whose bodies were found mutilated and dismembered on his property. Gain was eventually diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia and ruled legally insane. However, his crimes were still so disturbing that, to the point where the horror films Psycho and The Texas Chainsaw Massacre were made from this insane story. The Night Stalker. Through June 1984, a series of murders would be committed in the form of home invasions and murders across California. The murder methods were particularly evil, as he would break into homes late at night, brutalize his victims with beatings and assaults, and often commit satanic rituals before murdering them. The police were possibly dealing with a lunatic who was looking for his victims every night. He was known to leave satanic symbols at the crime scenes, leading to his Night Stalker name. His crimes weren't just murders, but extreme violence, sadism, and a seeming lack of remorse or empathy for his victim.
Which is most serial killers.
In some of the victims,
Yeah, there was a power outage, so I can't go on with the rest of the video. Other than that, I'll see you guys later. Peace.